Welcome back to the show. Today we have Brooke Markevicius on the show, and she was the founder of startup Allobee and led the company to a significant acquisition by the Riveter, all while being the mom of two. She's also a keynote speaker and the author of the upcoming book, The Future Built by Women, Creating a Brighter Future Through Tech and Innovation. She fervently supports women in tech and entrepreneurship. So, Brooke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for our audience, don't forget to build a thriving freelance business using corporate skills you already have with my Corporate to Contract course. And you can take the leap by going to corporate2contract.com, and use the code podcast for $100 off. So Brooke, again, thank you. And you know what, for our audience, this is going to be really exciting because Brooke has a background that a lot of you guys have, which is a freelancer. And then she grew and created this larger company. And then she finally got acquired. So it's fun for me to talk to someone who has been a freelancer way back when, maybe. I don't know. I actually, when I was doing research for you, you were freelancing in 2017, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've been pretty much in this freelance world for over 10 years now. Yeah.
But in just my math is horrible. It's 2024. But so just in 7 years, you've gone from being a freelancer, solopreneur to building a company, which is amazing. I mean, I've been a freelancer, just me, or was for 10 years. And then finally she went to coaching. And you did a little bit of coaching too, I saw. So it's like, but you just like condensed it all super fast, just skyrocket. So talk to us a little bit about, the vision you had for Allobee and what that turned into, and even how it got acquired by Riveter.
Yeah. So I jumped into freelancing really because I think most people, you want flexibility and freedom. And I definitely knew that I wanted that. I also had always had some sort of side hustle in life, and that's what kind of led me into freelancing. But when I was pregnant with my daughter and in grad school, that's really when I kind of started doing some freelancing and just fell into it in many ways. And that was what really fueled me to keep kind of going into it, because I wanted to keep growing it and providing some sort of flexibility for my life long term, as I started to have kids and grow into what my life would look like over time. But fast forward a few years into that, I saw that I wasn't the only person that was freelancing. There were a lot of other moms that were out there freelancing and looking for more flexibility. And that's really kind of what led me into building my company, Allobee, is that I saw that I had this background in technology, that I could build a platform that could help connect a lot of freelancers to support other business owners that were looking for freelancers and looking to hire them. And that's why I started my last company, Allobee.
And then how did Riveter come into this whole picture? Did they find you? Did you go out trying to seek to sell? How did that happen?
Yeah, so I built Allobee for about 4 years. It started out actually called Momentum Market. We were actually a marketplace of goods and services, but then we found that we needed to niche down a little bit and just focus on services. So we really were building hardcore for about 3.5 years. We raised venture funding. We grew significantly in a really short period of time. That condensed amount of time was amplified by the pandemic when everybody was hiring flexible virtual workers. And so we really took off quick and fast and grew significantly during 2020 and 2021. To the point that we were looking to raise again, but in 2022. But that was kind of during an economic shift. A lot of venture funding was slowing down. It wasn't as big at the time. And we were kind of in an interesting spot of, do we sell at this point? Do we keep growing? What are we going to do? And I had built a really good established network of other founders, other companies, investors at that point. And I just reached out to my network. And one of those was the Riveter, and several other companies we talked to about potential acquisition, and we decided to go with the Riveter at the time.
How do you get, so I was looking into the Riveter, and it's just for females, right? Just female freelancers.
Yes. So the Riveter has taken they've been around since 2017 is when they first initially started building the company. Amy, the founder, she ended up raising almost $30 million in venture funding. They specifically started out as a co-working space and really focused on in-person memberships and co-working. They had about 20 locations around the country. They focused a lot on freelancers and women that were in corporate that were looking for a flexible work environment. And it was predominantly female. There were several men allies that joined in and were part of the membership. But the pandemic hit in 2020 and they had to shut down all locations and pivot into being more of an online community for women that were looking for flexibility through freelancing, through building their solo entrepreneurship businesses, whatever it might have been, or they were looking to kind of make that jump from corporate into something else. And so that's really where the Riveter kind of shifted in that era. That's where they ended up taking on Allobee at the time. And now they're in a period of kind of shifting into being even more supportive for creators and freelancers with their Riveter school.
How do you then, I didn't see this on their page, how do you apply as a freelancer to be part of their community?
Yeah, so with my company Allobee during the acquisition, how we had it was what was called Riveter Work, which is basically Allobee, but kind of rebranded. And so you were able to go and be a freelancer through them and get freelance work specifically connecting them. We made the match, we set the price, and we supported along the ride, for lack of a better way. That's kind of how we took the approach. And right now they're in a period of kind of revamping that as freelancing has changed and evolved, and they're taking more of a focus of supporting women and freelancers specifically, and creators and everybody in that space, really to help them build their brand and their thought leadership and get more clients and support that way. And then I stepped away in October to start a new initiative. And so the Riveter is always, like, they've been probably supporting in this space one of the longest out of the kind of bigger companies out there. And so they're continuing to evolve and change how they're going to support freelancers.
Okay. Okay. That helps. So I'm excited to see where the company goes, because now I'm tabbing it and I'm like, because I was debating, like, do I put this into my course? Do I put this into my cohorts? Like, how do I want to kind of bring them in somehow, because they look like they align with my mission so well. But that's why I had to ask. So I'll keep my eye on them. I'll flag them in my bookmarks and check in every once in a while to see what they're up to. So what are you doing now? So you finally it sounds like in October. And what have you been doing?
Yeah, so I think this is something that just about any founder that founds a company and then you get acquired. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. It's hard to, in many ways, work for somebody else once you've already, built your own. And I knew that it was something that I probably would stay with for about a year and then go ahead and move on to what was next for me. And I'm still in that building and evolution phase of what's next, but I know that I'm already starting in that ideation phase and starting to build the next company that hopefully I'll be able to share and talk about in the near future. But in the meantime, I got a book deal back in April with Wiley Publishing and have a book coming out in April of this year called The Future Built by Women. And my biggest focus right now is supporting women that are building the future. And I think a lot of times we don't think about that as we think about it really just as founders that are building tech companies or people that are working in that space. But I've always looked at tech as a really good way to help people automate their businesses, gain back more time and time freedom. I built a product with tech to help women have more flexible work. And so I look at technology as a way to solve a problem that we're dealing with, and a way for us to make more money, a way for us to grow in our businesses. And so that's really what the book is about. And it's for anybody that is wanting to really build the future and solve problems. And you do that in all different ways. But one way that you can do that is through technology. And so that's really how I'm helping to support through some coaching, because I do have some coaching background. So helping with that, but really specifically on how you can use technology in your business to grow, but also not to burn out. Because I think it's really important to be able to use that for your benefit and help you to grow without burning out.
What advice do you have for other women who are looking at getting funding and wanting to explore the route of venture capitalism? Because I know that it can be venture capitalists. I know it can be tough for women doing that. So what advice do you have based on your experience?
Yeah, I write a whole chapter about it in the book because I probably could have written a whole book about it. Women get less than 2% of venture funding. And I think it's something that we don't always want to talk about. We sometimes want to be a little naive too, because we're very driven as women. We're very, we think we can, hit that glass ceiling, and I believe we can. But I think it's important for us to realize that there is so little funding coming to women. There's a lot of us that have been working to try to get more of that funding, have gotten more of that funding. I ended up raising over $600,000 for my company, and probably would have gone on to raise more if we hadn't have gone for an acquisition. It was not easy. It took a lot of time away from building the business as well by going out and raising funding. So what I always tell people, and someone gave me this advice when I started my company, is how fast do you truly want to grow? Do you need to put gasoline on the fire to be able to grow as fast as you want? If you do, then venture funding can be a really great opportunity for you. But every venture capitalist that you bring on is like taking on someone as a marriage partner, and they're going to be with you for the whole time. And so make sure they align with your values. Make sure the money that you're taking in is the money that you need. It's not an over amount. It's something that you actually are going to put to good use. And make sure that you're ready to step into that partnership with other people as you go into raising funding. It's a long process. It's something that is not easy, but you need to make sure that you're prepared and ready to take that on. So would I do it again? Yes, potentially for the right business. Would I necessarily do it next? I don't want to raise next time. For right now, I would rather bootstrap, but I think I learned a lot through the process. And I'm thankful that I did it I don't regret doing it for the business that I built before. It was definitely the right call.
Yeah, you know what? In one of the past episodes with Genevieve, people want to listen to this. She had a moment with her mentor where she was looking to franchise. And he said, because she's like, physical locations. And he said, but what do you want more of in your life or something like that? And she said, less stress. And he said, well, then franchising isn't the way to go about it.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of what you were saying, like, how fast do you want to grow? And is that stress worth it to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, definitely. It can be a really stressful endeavor. You don't have as much control over your business as you would once you bring investors on. But you can find some really great investors. I mean, I had some wonderful investors that were super behind me and my mission and my vision for what I was building with Allobee, and were supportive all the way until the end and are still supportive. But you also never know who's going to join into that group and offer money. So before you take a check, make sure you've done your research on who you're bringing into the pie with you. Yep.
So you are such a strong advocate of women. Where did this come from?
It's a good question. I actually started my career in nonprofit and education, and I grew up with a preacher and a teacher as parents. And so I've always approached anything that I've done in my life really from a more servant leadership type approach. I think that I really connected in supporting women right before I had my daughter. I was a part of a community where I actually ended up co-founding a co-working space called the Podworks. And that's really where I had the idea for Allobee initially, but it was a bunch of women coming together to support each other's dreams and initiatives and businesses. And it was a beautiful community of women supporting women. And from that time, I knew that there was something special about women supporting each other, and that if we would put away our egos and set those aside, that we really could collaborate and build together in so many ways. And I talk about that in my book too, because I had so many women that supported me all the way up to getting an acquisition. When we're able to collaborate and work together, we can make more money, we can make more impact, mm-hmm. we can really build the future together. And so I think it just continues to grow in me, that support for women, because I see so many people lending that helping hand and showing up for each other. And I think we really can do a lot together if we join forces as women.
How did it go trying to balance your motherhood and your personal life and family when you were raising money? Because I'm sure when you started out freelancing, like many of us, it was like, oh, wow, look at this freedom I can have. This is what I've always dreamed. But then as you grew, how did you balance that? And if maybe balance is the wrong word, even, like, how did you manage both so that you were able to find fulfillment in both areas of your life? Because I want to make a note, like, I can see that's important to you, because on your webpage, you said your tagline is author, speaker, entrepreneur, mother. And it's rare. I don't want to say rare, but I interview a lot of women and I look at their sites a lot. And unless the motherhood is very specifically part of their branding for some reason, most of the time it's not on there. But with you, it is. It's front and center. So how did you manage motherhood while you were, raising money and growing Allobee and then getting acquired?
Yeah, so I'll go on this question in two ways. One, I think I didn't always balance it very well. And I will say that I lost my own mission of having that flexibility for my life by building a company to help other women have that flexibility in their life. And that's something that I've probably spent the last 3 months trying to get through and manage myself and reclaim that flexibility for myself and that freedom. It's really hard. It's really hard to do that. I also believe that my motherhood is so much of the superpower of how I was able to build. You have an insane drive as a mom to build something, a better future for your kids. And I wanted that for me and for every woman that freelanced for us, every business owner that we helped to get freelancers hired with. I wanted to see that happen for all of these women. And I knew so many of them were mothers, or they wanted to be mothers, or they were raised by wonderful mothers. We had a really great multi-generational group of freelancers, everybody from grandmas all the way down to Gen Zs that were joining into our freelance workforce. And all of us really, had this drive in us in some way. And I think that motherhood just kind of pushed me to find that time and balance to be able to nurse my son when he was really young, when I was just starting Allobee, all the way to then my kids were going to school and they were, in full-time care. But I made it a really big initiative, and we can talk about this in hiring area too, but I wanted to make sure I hired a team that understood that about me, that I was going to pick my kids up from school, if at all possible, in the afternoon, that I was not going to take as many investor meetings that were going to involve me traveling. And that's just what it was going to be. Like, maybe we weren't going to be able to raise as fast because I wasn't going to be able to go away all the time. And I think that that's something where you have to really just get clear on what your boundaries look like before you go into a fundraise, before you go into building a company. What are kind of your non-negotiables? And for me, I was not going to be gone every week traveling and trying to get investors. I was going to find local investors. I was going to really work my network and be patient about it. And so it was hard. It was definitely seasons of a lot of hustle, and then seasons of a little less, where I was able to back off a little bit and lean into my team, and have them help out and support. But I had to be really diligent with my time management as well, making sure that, every minute was accounted for as much as possible. And that did impact my mental health. It impacted my ability to work out on a regular basis. It impacted a lot of different things. And so I really had to be strict about my time and boundaries as much as I could.
So what advice do you have for other women being strict about boundaries? But what would you say to a woman who might have started their business for that freedom and flexibility, and then they find themselves getting wrapped up in their business and they get joy out of it, but they're not having a personal life anymore? Because I think I see that a lot. That happens with the freelancers I coach is they start this because they get pulled into this whole idea of like, oh my gosh, freedom. I can take a walk whenever I want, go to the gym. I can be with my kids, whatever it is, right? And then they're just working all the time. What advice do you have for them, even if they find that joy in working?
I think the key that I've found, and even more recently, is looking back on the last several years, is can you find success outside of your career too? One of my mentors asked me that, is like, is only success defined in career for you, or is there success in other places? And it really made me look at my life and go, okay, I've been really successful in my career right now over the last 4 years, but where else is that success? What is hurting right now? What is not as successful? And where am I like lacking in the areas that I wanted to see with my life right now? I get really, really excited about work and love working, and it's a super big passion of mine. But I also found that I missed cooking. I love to cook. I missed working out, and now I love running and have taken that up. There's a lot of things that can fulfill you and you can fill that flexibility and freedom with that don't have to be work. And so for me, I like to really look at my calendar on a regular basis and go, am I over planning with career, or am I making sure that other things are in that calendar first? Is my life in that calendar? Is my health in that calendar? Are me taking care of my kids in that calendar? I had lost a lot of that, what I wanted for my life, by just focusing on my career. So that's what I would suggest, is really making sure that you put that other stuff before the career. And then if it's really important to you, you'll find the time for it. But it can go away first. Yourself can go away first when you're really focused on your business.
Normally, I don't ask this. Actually, I don't know if I've ever asked this, but I noticed on your webpage, on your bio, you talk about your husband and how he's your biggest cheerleader or something like that. And that was adorable. It gave me cozy, warm feelings. When you turn into a woman entrepreneur, what do you think women should look for in a supportive partner?
Yeah. I'm a real big advocate of my husband, and I can say this. I was in a horrible marriage before I met him, and so I think I have an even more like distinct outlook on this because I've seen the other side. But no, he's a gem in all the ways. And in the book, which you'll find this funny when you read it one day, but I have one called Get Yourself an Edgar. My husband's name is Edgar. And everybody that has read the book so far is like, it's the best part of the book. But it's really funny in the same respect, because I think when you find somebody that, I will say he's one of like my best friends, so I can lean on him in a lot of different ways, but we're also intellectually at kind of the same level and push each other intellectually. We both have a pretty big drive for life and success, but also for family and relaxation, and to live a life that we really love and build one together. And so I think you need to find somebody that complements you, but also pushes you, and that really is going to be there for you on the really, really crappy days and times. And he's still my biggest, cheerleader, even, past Allobee, he was always my biggest cheerleader there, but he also is good at reflecting back on me what I might not want to see right now or might not want to feel. And so like right now, he's like, you're the happiest you've been in like a long time. And that's a good, that feels good when you're able to hear those things. He's like, you're also very happy when you were building the company, but what are the things that you've gained during this time? So I think those are things that you should look for when you're trying to find a spouse. And if you're not getting that, one of my best tips is you need to read with your spouse a book called Fair Play by my friend Eve Rodsky. It's super helpful to make sure that you are taking on and sharing the load of, whether you're a parent or not, just the load of living with somebody, and really sharing and splitting that up, because you, especially if you're really busy in a busy season of your business and your career, you need to have somebody that's willing to share that load with you, or you are 100% going to burn out. So how can you find that person that's really willing to share that load and be with you on that journey?
Wow. That's so important, all of it. I know my husband, he's always been really supportive. There was also been times where he's been a little bit pushing back, like not in the sense of like, are you sure you want to do this? But more like, have you thought this, like, not have you thought this, like, have you thought of A, B, C, D, E, F, like all these different steps? And sometimes I haven't, because like I'm a very gut-based person in that sense. And I'm like, oh, well, this feels like the right thing. I'm going to go do it. And he's like, okay, I love you, but have you thought about this?
It's good to have somebody that will reflect that back, make you see things that maybe you don't want to face at that time either.
I actually get like mad at him. I'm like, oh, why do you see that? Oh, and I get mad. And then like a day later, I'm like, yeah, that was a good thing to call me out on.
Yeah, exactly. I know sometimes we need that little space in between those interactions, for sure.
Yeah. So what do you think was the most important action item you took to grow your business so quickly?
I'm really good at, once I gain momentum, to continue to let that momentum push me down the line and keep me going. And I say that because even a little experiment I'm doing right now with myself of, can I keep up with my like New Year's goals, for lack of a better word? I started them before the new year hit because I knew I was more likely to continue them if they were already flowing in momentum. And so I've been really successful with it. I just posted about this on social media, but I've been really consistent this month with my goals because I let myself gain momentum and not stop that momentum. That doesn't mean you have to be going at 90 miles per hour every single day, but it's, what are the things that help you continue to gain that momentum? For me, when I was building a business, it was making sure that I was really aligned in my values and my business and my mission, that was always coming into play every single day, and going, okay, what's your why? Like it was always, my why was really strong and really there helping to move me on that momentum. It was also hiring the right people and making sure that they were aligned with those values and they were continuing to help that momentum flow. And then it was making sure that I was continuing to grow my network that would allow me to open up into opportunities for more clients and more freelancers. And then it was getting on podcasts like this and other ones, and just continuing to gain that momentum on a daily basis. And so even when the days were really, really hard, and there were really big roadblocks and everything, I still had that momentum coming, that force behind me to kind of push through that rock or that boulder or that roadblock that was there. It would help me get through it or get over it in some capacity because of what I had already going. So just those daily action steps that keep you moving forward, keep you gaining momentum, is really what I think helped me kind of go down that, rabbit hole really fast and push through that. And I know that I need that for the next business that I build, that you have to have that consistency. And one thing that I didn't do as good of during building a company last time, because it was so fast and it was so intense during this period of time, plus the pandemic didn't particularly help that situation, but it helped and it hurt in many ways. It amplified a lot of things, but I didn't take that time for myself and my health to be at the peak performance to keep up with that momentum. And so that's why, as I'm going into this new era of building and launching a book and all of these things, is that I'm really focusing on that fueling my momentum, because I know that if I want to run another marathon of building a business, I have to be fueled right. I have to have the energy to keep up with it. And I need to make sure that I'm, my mindset is good. All of these things are positive that will help me to continue to gain that momentum. I know how to run the business. I know how to be successful there, but how can I be in it for the long game, especially if I want to bootstrap it and make it go maybe a little bit more sustainable for the future.
What advice do you have for women around mindset? Because, you're coming from, you did have a master's, I saw actually from Boston University. I am outside of Boston, so that was really cool.
Oh, cool.
But, you have a master's. It wasn't necessarily that you had it's not like you went to, what's that school, Babson or Bentley around here, which is like specifically for business. You don't have that background building businesses. And then you're a freelancer and then you just kind of grew it. And there's, I think, a lot of women freelancers or even women solopreneurs who are kind of on the edge, but they're struggling because their mindset just like, you can't do that. How are you going to build a team and build a tech company and build a whatever company it is? You can't do that. They kind of struggle with that. So they hold themselves back. How do you push through that? What's the mindset advice that you have for women who are struggling with that?
Yeah. I get asked about imposter syndrome a lot. I also like to push back on it when people ask me because I think that
I did want to hold on for the record. I did want to say imposter syndrome because I just read on LinkedIn this post that it was all made up by the patriarchy, and I was just like, "Whoa, what?" Like but I know men who talk about imposter syndrome all the time. Like, what are you doing? Like, and I just. So that, literally, that was just 3 days ago that I read that. And it just blew my mind and it freaked me out. And I was like, maybe I'm never going to say that word, like that phrase again, imposter syndrome doesn't. So I purposefully stayed away from that.
No, I think imposter, I haven't read that article, but I think imposter syndrome is definitely real. I think it's also just and maybe it's another way to look at it is we're leveling up in some way when we're entering into whatever next thing we're trying to do. And so whenever we're expanding, I had a coach one time that talked a lot about expansion and how we get like expansion sickness when we're moving into that next level. And one of those things that I think we feel is this just like this imposter that we are kind of walking into a room that maybe we don't feel like we're supposed to be in. One of which you can't see it here, but the quote behind my desk is from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it says, "Women belong in all the places where decisions are being made." And I keep that behind my desk for a lot of reasons, but one specifically that if we're not in the room, if we're not there, if we're not taking up space, how are any decisions going to be made about us that are good for us? For whatever we want to do in our lives. And so I always feel like if I can just have the mindset to get into the room, if I can just have the mindset to build this product or to speak on this stage or just to get into the place, I know what I'm bringing into it is valuable. I've seen that it's valuable. I've seen that people appreciate it or use it or whatever it might be. I just need to get in there. And so one of the tools that I use to just get myself into the room, even if I'm anxious or nervous about it, or how I really stepped into starting a company in the tech space is I just kind of pretend that I am bigger than I am. And I mean that by, I don't know if you ever watched the show Breaking Bad, but in the show, this one guy that's a part of it, Jesse, he says, "I'm a blowfish," and he tries to puff himself up in his mind as taking up more space and being bigger. And he's like, "I'm a blowfish, I'm a blowfish, I'm a blowfish." And he just keeps telling himself this every time as he's trying to enter into this place and what he's doing. But I try to remind myself that and make myself kind of laugh and think about it as I'm going into anything different. Whenever I was going into investor meetings, I'm a blowfish, I can do this. I can take up more space. I'm worthy of being here. And I know what I'm doing just as much as the next person does. And I think whenever we're building something, if we're a freelancer, we're very good at what we do, very specific in that area, taking care of that specific type of client or building that specific type of product that really you're an expert in your own way. You're an expert in what you're doing. And so you're going to know more than the next person in the room in your specific area. So use that to your advantage. And that's what I did with mine. I really embraced knowing everything I could about women freelancers and also women that were building businesses. And I really immersed myself into that for several years before building the product that I did. And then I built that product specifically for those people. And so I knew that I was an expert in that. So really just remind yourself that you're the expert and you know what you're talking about, and take up that space that you need to build whatever you're building in your life.
Mm, that was great. I mean, like, when I talk with my group cohorts, I talk a lot about like you have to find something that gives you that confidence. Like kind of like you're talking about with a blowfish, like I'm a blowfish
Yeah.
and can take up
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I have the specific song that I play, and then that just gives me the confidence to like be like, I can do this and I belong here.
Yeah.
Right. Like so I like that. It's kind of like finding that something that's
Yes.
going to make you, and you make a lot of good other points too. Like, yes, we deserve to be in the room. Yes, if we're in the room, then the decisions will at least have our voice with them. So I like all of that. You talked about hiring quite a bit. I just want to go into that. Um, what are some challenges and setbacks you had with hiring as you grew?
Yeah, so in my previous career in nonprofit, I had managed like 30 people were under me as I was a really young manager. I managed a domestic violence and homeless shelter for years and had to hire and fire a ton. And so I knew a lot about that of just being a manager and having to deal with the ups and downs and crisis and problems and everything that would surround that. But I wasn't as prepared for the rapid hiring that was going to occur and the need for a very niche and very skilled team as you're growing a startup. And also the fact that everybody wears a million hats, as you know, as an entrepreneur. And so as you're building a startup, specifically in the space that I did, we were going on limited funding. You never knew how long that funding was going to last for specifically. And you're wanting to keep people that are not just, there for the paycheck, but also really behind the mission and vision of what you're building. And so making sure that they are aligned with it from day one and that they are on board for it. I was really wanting to have an all-female team. It was something that I was like, we're building a product for women. I really want it to be all female. And I pushed on that a lot and was able to achieve that. Our engineers were female. We got some of the best teammates. I had to get really creative with it though. To hire our first engineer, I literally emailed every university within a certain mile radius, asking them who was going to be exiting their program that was a woman really soon that would be looking to come into a startup. And luckily, one of the girls that I emailed, her friend was just about to graduate and looking for a job, and we were able to hire her on. She now works at Google, so I feel like I hired a good engineer. But also, when you're hiring, really lean into your network and hear from people that have worked with these people. Make sure that you know who you're hiring and bringing in to work on your baby, for lack of a better word, too, especially if it's your business that you're hiring for. There's a lot riding on it. And I joked for years that Allobee was my third child. And so you really only want to trust your child or your business with people that you really, really can trust. Mm-hmm. And so that's something you need to look for as you're going into the hiring process. So it's not just checking the boxes of their skill sets and their abilities, but also, are they a culture fit? We were a remote team. So can you work remotely? Are you going to be able to successfully do that? What's your background, all of these different things. But for me, a lot of it was, were they aligned with our values and mission? And I think when it came down to that, my best employees were very, very aligned with that. Even if they weren't the best skill set fit, if they had that drive and that alignment with vision, they were a lot better hire in the end.
Mm. How do you get an honest reference from someone? That is something I've struggled with. And asking the right questions. And it's something I struggle with too when people call me for reference, because of course I want this other person to succeed, even if they weren't a good fit for my business. But then they're also glaring, issues I had with them. Like how do you make sure you're getting a reference that's honest from hiring?
Yeah, I actually was just having this conversation with the founder the other day. References need to be disrupted in some capacity and like a way that we do references. I think they should be collected kind of like after someone leaves a job and like almost kept in some way to be recorded for people in the future. But what I found is you really need to look at what have they contributed. So almost not even talking to people for a specific reference check, but like what have they really done? Like, can they actually talk about a project that they've done in the past for you, like for somebody else? If you're like,
Mm.
let's say you saw that I don't know, like did a project on how to build a, freelance tool or something like that. Can they really explain that to you and go into some depth on it? Or are they just writing it and putting it on their resume? Or way back when they started their career, really trying to dive into some areas that maybe they haven't brought up, but they've written them down or they've put there. I try to poke holes into stuff, and that usually helps a little bit. And then I think for people, I know you said you're a follow your gut person. I think a lot is gut, but you need to spend some time with them. So I tried to either have them go through like like multiple different people they would talk to on our team as we were hiring. And when I didn't really have much of a team, I would ask mentors to help, could you just jump on a call with this person and do a quick interview with them and give me your opinion? They often were right, even if I didn't, excuse me, want to hear it. They were often right about what was going on.
Oh, okay. I mean, I've changed my hiring process actually as a result of doing so many of these interviews. And I have to say that my latest hire was really, really a good one, I think. It's only been a few months, but it was because I spent more time. I actually had a mock assignment for them to go through. And the people who didn't want to do a mock assignment, even though I was going to pay them, if they didn't want to do the mock assignment, I had to remove them. And then I also from the process, because like even if I loved them, like there was one girl I really, really loved, and she had a lot of the background, but she didn't want to do the mock assignment. And I was like, I can't move forward with you. And then again, I had them um after each interview, I would go through and like mark how many stars out of 5 that I felt like them because I some of my problem with hiring is I get really wrapped into how much I like the person on a personality level, and I really struggled between two people because there's one woman I loved on a personality level. We really connected, and then there's another one who was good, but it was a little anyway. What I'm saying that kind of reflects about what you're saying is make sure it's a good process, a long process, because then I think you're going to end up with a better fit. And of course, matching your mission and your values and all of that is going to just help, I think, a lot. So I know we can't learn or know much about your business and where it's going, but I would love to know if any last parting thoughts on time management and how to successfully carry that through businesses. Again, you can't talk too much about when you're starting now, but
Yeah,
what are some time management techniques that you had, or even platforms or systems you use that you found really, really helped as you moved through each iteration, solopreneur,
yeah,
and then Allobee, and then the Riveter, etc.
for sure. I'm actually in such an interesting time frame because now I don't have any employees really right now when I was having a ton. So we used Asana. I've loved Asana for years. Used it pre starting Allobee, just like myself and my virtual assistant and my bookkeeper. And then I ended up using Asana for pretty much the whole time that Allobee existed. And we would just automate and integrate with Slack and other platforms that we were using. But it was great for project management and being able to see were we hitting our goals, were we able to achieve it, which projects were people working on. I had a better oversight as a business owner, being able to look at what everybody was working on without having to go, hey, have you worked on this?
Mm.
Have you had done this? And I was able to see, okay, well, all these comments are happening. They're checking these boxes off. This is happening. These projects are moving forward. So it allowed us to have a lot better team meetings and more efficient team meetings, especially as a remote team. So I encourage a use of some sort of project management software out there. I'm a big project management nerd, and so that Asana is my favorite. There's a lot of other more simplistic platforms out there as well. Trello is great. But I think whenever you're able to, especially as a solo entrepreneur or a freelancer, if you don't have a team yet, and this is something I'm redoing now as myself, is having some sort of system that's tracking you and your progress, because especially when you're alone and by yourself, it can feel really intimidating that I'm not making the progress that I want. I'm not moving fast enough. I hear that a lot, especially from early stage founders that have a really small team, or they're the only ones, or freelancers too. And I'm like, but look back at what you did this week. Did you check any of the boxes that you were looking to check this week? And if you did, you've moved forward. You're already moving forward. So it's really good for you, for your mindset too, to be able to see that you've checked these boxes. So for me personally, right now, I picked the top 3 things I need to do for the week. One of them is going to move my business forward. 2 of them are going to take things off of my plate that I've been meaning to take off of my plate that need to get done. But one always moves my business forward to give me that momentum and keep me going. And maybe that's helping me make more money. Maybe that's helping me book podcasts. Maybe it's whatever it might be. But I track that both on paper, and then I also track it, and I'm still using Asana. So for me, even though it's just me right now, I am working on a few projects with other people and doing some consulting in this in between as I am building again, but that's helping me see I'm making that progress. And then what's the best thing about it, and what I saw as I was going and growing in businesses, is that once I went from just me to 1 person to then 3 people, then to 10 people, I didn't have to change systems. It was already there. I was already tracking. I was already used to it. So it was something that I was using. And then I was able to bring my team on, teach them how to use it, make sure they were using it, and continue with a more seamless approach than having to restart over again. So it doesn't always matter what system you use, as long as you're consistent with your usage of that system and how you run your business.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. If you could distill your advice down for women who just want to grow their business and maybe hit multi 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond, what advice do you have for them?
Don't get ahead of yourself. Really try to stay in the present, because it can be really intimidating if you're looking too much into the future. So I really tried the whole time I was building my company to stay within that quarter. And yes, I had our goals for the year, my 5-year goals, all of that. I'm a big goals person in general, but I really had to work to stay in that present moment, because everything can change in your business so fast. Like anything can change. The economy can change, people on your team can quit, all of the things can happen. So if you're really present about what your goals are for that specific month, you are able to achieve a lot in that time. So maybe the next season it's harder, but you've done a lot in that first season to help propel you through the rest of the year. And I really feel like by being in that present moment, it really helped me to build and grow and not get too far ahead of myself and thinking too far, that I was able to see that success just compound upon itself.
I love it. I love everything you've talked about with momentum, because I think that's so true. Like once you get that momentum and you keep going and keep going, like results are going to show because you're putting in that effort. It's like when you stop that momentum, it can be, and I know this because when I've gotten sick, generally a lot of things stop with the bare minimum, or my kids are sick or whatever. And, but then when I start going again, I love that. I love that feeling. I'm like, yes, things are happening. There's got to be a result from this, right? There has to be.
Exactly. And I mean, you bring up such a good point. Like as moms and just in general life, we're going to get sick. There's going to be seasons of downtime where things are hard. But if you've been consistent about gaining that momentum over and over for so long, you can take those pauses. Like I just literally took like 2 months off for the first time in forever because I had the ability to do that. But I didn't lose them. I came back in January and there's momentum still here because of what I've built for so long. And so don't feel like you can't take that space and time. Just make sure that when you are in it, when you are present, that you're building that momentum.
Awesome. This has been such a good discussion. I'm so thankful for your advice. Where can we find you? Please share for our audience anything you want them to know if they want to connect with you.
Yeah, so you can find all my stuff on my website, brookemarkevicius.com. And also my handle on Instagram is that. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably the most well written and spoken on Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's kind of where I usually hang out. And then my book comes out on April 23rd, and you can pre-order it now from any of the major places where you can buy books.
Awesome. I'm excited about the book. Thank you so much. So, what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your businesses by?
As for me, it's always staying aligned with my mission. So my mission might change from season to season, but staying aligned with that mission on a regular basis just really helps me to stay grounded and focused. And so just running it by mission, being mission driven. That's my motto.
Love it. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me on this interview, Brooke. And if you're listening to this as our audience and you found it valuable and informative, please share this episode. Help us grow the show. And Brooke will thank you too. I'm sure she'll love it. Love you for doing it. So again, for next time, you can find me on Instagram at the Kiri Mohan or LinkedIn. So Brooke, thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.